All right, let's jump right in. For almost all of human history, the heavens were a pretty crowded place. I mean, you had a god for the sun, a god for the sea, for war, for love, you name it. It was like a divine reflection of our own complicated world. But then, something huge happened. It's like all those gods got fired, and just one got the ultimate promotion to CEO of the universe.
So, that's really the core question we're tackling here, right? Why? Why did humanity suddenly shift from having all these gods to just one? Was it some kind of grand spiritual revelation, or just maybe was there something else going on behind the scenes? Well, the answer, as it turns out, is a story that's not just about faith. It's really about politics. The rise of a single god is, believe it or not, completely tangled up with the rise of a new kind of power. A power that was centralized, absolute, and was desperately looking for a divine stamp of approval. You could say it was the ultimate alliance. Okay, so before we can really get our heads around this revolution, we've got to understand the world it completely upended. See, the world of many gods wasn't chaotic at all. It was actually a pretty elegant system. And the amazing part is, it was a perfect mirror of the human societies that created it. Just think about an ancient temple for a second. It wasn't just a place to go pray. No way. It was the absolute heart of the community. It was your bank, where you got a loan. It was the courthouse, settling your disputes. It was even the local granary, storing the harvest. So every temple, with its own god, was basically its own little center of local power. Power was spread out, not all in one place. And this really gets to the heart of it. The gods themselves had their own politics, rivalries, alliances, hierarchies. It was just like the world of kings and city-states down on Earth. I mean, even Zeus had to worry about rebellions, right? The Egyptian god Osiris got overthrown by his own brother. So it was simple. Many gods meant many different centers of power, both up in the heavens and down here on the ground. So this brings us to the first person who really tried to blow this whole system up. We're talking about ancient Egypt, where one pharaoh looked at all this and saw a massive political opportunity in the idea of having just one god. So back in the 14th century BCE, you've got Pharaoh Amenhotep IV. He inherits this booming empire where the priests of the god Amun are super powerful. But he has this wild idea. He changes his own name to Akhenaten, declares that this sun disk thing, Aten, is the only god, and boom, in one move, he pulls off a brilliant political takedown. He shatters the power of those rival priests and basically says all divine and earthly power, yeah, that's mine now. Let's be clear, this wasn't really a deep theological debate. It was a hostile takeover, plain and simple. And for the very first time in history, we see the blueprint for this powerful new partnership. One God, one king, one absolute source of power. But, spoiler alert, Akhenaten's revolution didn't stick. The moment he was gone, the old gods and the old power structures came rushing right back in. Okay, so now let's flip the script. Let's compare that top-down power play with a totally different journey to one god. This story doesn't start in a fancy palace. Nope, it starts with a small community of nomads out in the ancient Near East. And here you can see the two models perfectly, side by side. Akhenaten's one god system, it was a political tool. And the second the ruler was gone, the whole thing just fell apart. But Judaism, that was a different story. It wasn't forced on people from the top. It grew up from the community, from the ground up, becoming the absolute core of a people's identity. It was all built on this idea of a divine contract. Now, this journey didn't happen overnight. For a really long time, the ancient Israelites practiced something scholars call monolatry. It's a fascinating idea. They weren't necessarily saying other gods didn't exist for other people. They were just saying, yeah, those gods might be real, but we worship only our God. It was a declaration of exclusive loyalty, like picking a team. And this concept of a covenant, basically a sacred deal, was absolutely revolutionary. It turned faith from just, simple worship into a powerful political identity. This one idea, you'll be my people and I'll be your God, became the glue that held them together through everything: war, conquest, exile. Why? Because their God wasn't stuck in a building. He was tied to the people themselves, wherever they went. All right, now we get to the moment where this whole alliance between God and power was basically perfected. This is where it becomes the bedrock of what we call Western civilization. We're talking, of course, about Rome. So at first, Rome's big trick was its tolerance. It was super practical. As they conquered new places, they just said, hey, bring your gods into our pantheon, the more the merrier. It was a smart way to keep a huge, diverse empire from falling apart. But then, things started to change, step by calculated step. In 313, Emperor Constantine makes Christianity legal. And then comes the big one, the real game changer. In 380, Emperor Theodosius makes Christianity the one and only official religion of the state. So, what happened? Well, the leaders of Rome finally figured out what Akhenaten had tried centuries earlier. Monotheism. It's the perfect ideological software to run the hardware of a massive, messy, multicultural empire. It gave them a single, universal truth that could bind everyone from Spain to Syria together under one divine authority, and of course, one emperor. So, in our final section, let's look at the huge, lasting consequences of this shift. Because let me tell you, when God became one, it changed a lot more than just how people prayed. It fundamentally changed how we think about truth itself. This move to a single God brought a brand new and pretty radical concept into the world, the monopoly on truth. The idea that there's only one right way, one correct answer. And if there's a right way, that means there must be a wrong way. Now, this was a powerful way to organize society for sure, but it also drew a very clear, very sharp line in the sand between the believer and the non-believer, between us and them. And this monopoly on truth just completely reshaped society from the ground up. Think about it. Power, which used to be spread out across countless local shrines, was now concentrated into one central cathedral. Law, which used to be based on local customs, was now replaced by a universal divine law. And knowledge, once passed down through all these different oral traditions, was now standardized into a single authoritative holy book. Now, you might think this powerful model would just fade away as the world got more secular, but it didn't. Not at all. It was just adapted. The whole structure of a single unquestionable truth, a guiding text, a clear vision for society, that was mirrored almost perfectly in 20th century political ideologies. Take fascism, for instance. And you see the exact same pattern with communism, right? It had its own single party acting like a new priesthood, and the writings of Marx and Lenin, well, those became the new untouchable scriptures. The labels changed, the ideas changed, but the underlying structure, that monopoly on truth, remained hauntingly familiar. Which, of course, brings this whole question right into our world today. Are we seeing this pattern play out all over again? I mean, think about the massive tech platforms that basically run our lives. Are they the new cathedrals? Are there powerful, invisible algorithms defining a new, single version of the truth for billions of us? It's a really compelling and, kind of unnerving thought. And so that leaves us with this one last, really provocative idea to chew on. The move to one God was, in many ways, this grand quest for unity, right? A search for a universal truth that could bring everyone together. But the great irony is that its biggest legacy, maybe, was creating the deepest and most painful divisions the world has ever known. The story of God becoming one wasn't just a story about faith. It was the story of power remaking the entire world.